One of the strangest teachings in all of rabbinic literature is found in the Talmud of Menachot 37a. It talks about a baby that is born with two heads, and the rabbis are trying to decide if that baby gets a split inheritance of its father's wealth upon his demise, or a single one. And as you can imagine, amongst rabbis, there is all types of forth and back conversation as to how we count such a being. One rabbi comes up with the idea, if we pour boiling water on one baby's head and the other baby cries, then they are one. But if we pour boiling water on one baby's head and the other baby doesn't cry, then they are separate individuals. It's a pretty gruesome teaching, but it has a parable for us. That parable was elucidated by Rabbi Soloveitchik in his beautiful book, Kol Dodi Dofek. And he says that when a Jew in Morocco feels pain, the Jew in London and Paris should cry. The teaching from Menachot should not be taken literally, but it's a moment that the pain has been inflicted on Jews in Israel, and Jews around the world should cry. And I will bravely and brazenly make another statement, that there are more than Jews suffering tonight. There are other innocent people that are in pain and going through loss. And as Jews and humans, I'm crying, and you should cry too. But I want to be crystal clear. The responsibility, the blame of that blood, of that pain, falls squarely on Hamas. And for all of those that refuse to cry when pain happened to Jewish people, but shed tears when it happens to Palestinian people, we are not part of the same moral group. We are not bound by the same values. And I encourage them to coordinate and recalibrate their moral compass now. This is a time that is unlike any other in my life, and most likely in your lives too. And I will tell you that I have stood proudly in this community with members of all different backgrounds and races when civil rights rose to the surface after the death of George Floyd, and I declared from this bima, Black Lives Matter. And when Asian Americans in this community were targeted, they were targeted because of COVID. We stood on this bima and we said, no way. We will not stand as our neighbors are being persecuted. When a white nationalist walked into a Sikh church in Wisconsin and shot up those worshipers, we said he does not represent our America under the flag he is flying. But I'm taking notice of who's standing next to me today. And let me tell you all something. Should another black man die because someone was racist? Should another Sikh be murdered in their place of prayer? Should another Asian American be targeted for any reason? I promise you, I will stand up again. I will stand shoulder to shoulder again with anyone who fights against that. Why? Because I don't stand up to curry favor, or to earn chits. I stand up because of my moral compass and the values that were instilled upon me by my family, by the family that I'm creating, and by the Torah that I study and believe in. And for all of those people that I stood next to at Black Lives Matter rallies, at stopping Asian hate, at protesting Klan members and white nationalism, who are absent now, I am hurt, not only by your absence. I am hurt because all this time I was misled. I thought that our moral compasses were calibrated together, but clearly they weren't. If you are on the Gaza Strip right now, as many different reporters are, they took note to the fact that the soldiers have a different posture. Many of them have their helmets and their flak jackets and their gear on when they were just gathering days before. They're ready for the ground invasion. They are geared up. And I want to tell you all that we have to gear up also. As I read beautifully and painfully in one report that said, my kids go to a Jewish day school in New York, it's pluralistic, and half of the parents aren't sending their kids to school tomorrow. When are we going to stop kidding ourselves that this is about Israel and it's really about anti-Semitism? We too have to gird up for a war. Our young men and women, our cousins, our brothers and sisters are going to be going into the front line in harm's way. And I promise you, they are not only fighting for the Jewish state, they are fighting for the Jewish people wherever they live. They're fighting for you and for me. And we have a job also. And I believe it is threefold. Number one, we must be vigilant against printed media, against broadcast television, against social media streams, and against water cooler pundits that want to twist and distort and ignore facts. We have to arm our flak jackets with facts and data and figures that deny them their propaganda and serve them a hot helping of truth. We cannot sit by. We have to sit at our keyboards and on the telephones and writing letters. Writing letters to university of presidents, writing letters to presidents of broadcast. But all of us need to write letters. And they all don't have to be bad. I have seen just as many fantastic statements from universities that I have seen crappy ones. And we could write the nasty letters to the universities that were tepid and that skirted the issue. And we can condemn them and shake a finger at them. And we can write letters of gratitude and thanks to those who bravely said what needed to be said. Whether on the air, in an article, or representing an institution or an organization. That's the first part of our job. The second part of our job, which is connected to it, is we have to arm ourselves with data and facts. Outside, I presented this little sheet. It's double-sided with two different sides of facts. The first is something I created that I hope will be shared amongst Jewish organizations worldwide, because in the alphabet soup of Jewish organizations, we seem to be disparate with a lot of different streams, and that's okay sometimes. But right now, we must be chanting from the same hymnal. And I believe three statements need to be shared by everyone, for everyone, and I share them with you, whether you're the head of an organization or not. Share them with your friends, put it on social media. Let these be the three talking points. The first is, there is no equivocation or justification that can excuse the brutality and heinous murder of innocent civilians committed by Hamas. Second, Israel has every right, indeed an obligation, to defend itself, its citizens, and to ensure that this terror can never happen again to this country. And lastly, Hamas is responsible for the death and suffering of innocent civilians in Gaza. The Jewish people do not celebrate the plight of Gazans subject to the chokehold and terror of Hamas. The civilized world must hold Hamas responsible for this sad reality. Now, if you put on the news, doesn't matter what channel, the tide is already turning. It's only been a few days, and already we're hearing about the plight of the Palestinians. I saw Richard Engel on the Today Show show a baby being pulled from a building. He was dead, covered in soot. And what I wrote to Richard Engel is what I share with you today. The difference here is I don't know one Jew, not one Israeli, that is celebrating that death, that is handing out candy, that is saying that's a good start. I cry for that baby. You cry for that baby. But the responsibility of the death of that baby lies on the hands of the evil, barbaric Hamas. And that must be our mantra. Now, as the tide has turned and empathy is starting to garner for the plight of the Palestinians, and every media outlet I've read so far talks about 1.2 million Gazans who are being told to evacuate but have nowhere to go, I have 3 quick responses that are also on the sheet that you can share at your water cooler or on your social media feeds. The first, and this is the most important, is that Gaza shares a border with another Muslim country called Egypt, and that the international world should demand that Egypt let them in to Sinai, where the United Nations and all of UNRWA can set up tent cities for them, feed them, nourish them, protect them, and they can be safe. And any other country that had demonstrations in support of the Palestinians and against Israel could easily open their borders to the Palestinians. The fact that they haven't should be no surprise to any of you. This is just as much about the denial of Israel's right to exist as it is about any form, if ever, of statehood. Secondly, Iran funds terror in Gaza, billions of dollars a year. And the United Nations and the international community has given millions upon millions to the support and aid of the Gazan community. Most of those dollars are sitting with the heads of Hamas in 6-star hotels, in billion-dollar mansions, and Qatar. So ask Tehran and Qatar to find safe passage for the Gazans that they care so deeply about. And thirdly, when the Israeli army drops 50,000 leaflets and sends out broadcasts in warning to evacuate the area for their own safety, and Hamas demands of people not to move under the penalty of death, I ask you to ask those who say this, which one is responsible for war crimes? Which one is the criminal? At night, when it's the darkest, roaches come out. And there have been a lot of roaches that have come out in our moment of darkness. They are a small but fierce group, and they roar so loudly you would think they're a lion, when really they are cowardly mice. The way to make the roaches stay at bay is with light. I believe that we have a responsibility. Just as we gird up by our keyboards and with our pens, we need to demonstrate our Zionism and be proud of our Judaism. I have ordered 3,000 lawn signs that you saw when you walked in that say, "We stand with Israel." I ordered 200 flags just like this one here. I want you to do two things. One, if you're comfortable as a family, take a lawn sign, put it up proudly. I want to blanket Bergen County with our support for Israel and eventually blanket the country with it. And two, I want you to go to local merchants and ask them if they're comfortable putting signs up. I understand the corporations that can't because there's hierarchies. But in all of my years, I have always said when people said, "I'm sorry I didn't come to shul, I'm sorry I can't come this week, I'm sorry I didn't come on the holidays," I always say, "I don't take attendance." But I'm telling you all, I'm taking roll call. And I want to know every single merchant that puts up the sign, and I want to know every single merchant that doesn't. This time is different. And we have to be soldiers too. I spent my afternoon in a soft target of tenafly, going to many of the stores and asking them to put up the sign, and most of them did. You need to do the same. There's two more things we have to do. It's not pleasant for me to talk about, especially on Shabbat, but tonight is different. If you're comfortable, make a donation for each sign. They cost a few dollars to the temple. $18 is what we're asking. It only covers our cost of making the sign. The same thing for the flag. If you want to cover more, God bless. It helps. The second thing is, Israel's going to need our financial support. 4 direct places that need it most importantly are the FIDF, who are going to be offering supplies and support to Israel and its soldiers. The second is Hatzalah and Magen David Adom that are offering first aid not only to those on the front lines, but all throughout Israel. People still have heart attacks in Jerusalem while there's a war being fought in Gaza. And lastly, and this will come down very soon, trauma centers that deal with emotional support, especially for young people, but for all ages, who were affected by loss and tragedy. Any dollar that is raised from the temple, any dollar, will go to those causes right now, and not a nickel will go to our overhead. Not a nickel. Any trips that we take, emergency missions, anything we collect will be separate. 100% will go there. I think it would be powerful if our synagogue could bandy together and present an ICU field hospital. I think it would be powerful if our synagogue could bandy together and present 1 or 2 ambulances. I think it would be powerful if our synagogue can bandy together and present 1 or 2 ambucycles. These all have serious price tags. This is a moment for serious challenge and to dig deep in our pockets. The words of the Israeli people have always been Hatikva, the hope. Evie, our daughter, who is at Emory University, has a dear friend that she was very close with this summer. He was missing for 3 days. And Dory and I said, "Well, honey, hopefully they'll find him." And she said, "No, he's dead." We said, "Baby, you have to have hope." And she said to us, "Mommy, Daddy, I can't have hope. It hurts too much when that hope is taken away." On Wednesday, her friend was identified. She is one of the few that is blessed to know that he's been identified, that he wasn't captured or his whereabouts unknown. But that piece about losing that hope, it leveled me, because that has always buoyed our people. Somehow or another, even in this pitch blackness, we have to find some hope. I believe that the hope, as kitschy as that sounds, is in the white of everyone's eyes. That when we can look into them and see and feel their humanity, that hope will lift us higher, remind us of our resolve, and task us with our orders forward. May we find that hope. May we please find that hope.